I did a lot of research. I don't just go in and jump in. I have to do tons of research. There was no like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. And I just taught myself. All right, if they can do it, if VO Buzz Weekly and George, they can do it, then I can do it.
George the Tech.
Hey everybody, I'm George the Tech, and I've had a really cool opportunity today, thanks to a chance meeting and a little reminder of who we are and what we do from my guest today. I've got with me Veronica Barrera, who is a podcaster and voice actor who has worked with me, and we've just gotten to know each other over time. But today, we get a little bit deeper about who she is and also the process she goes through doing what we're doing right now, which is producing a podcast. Thanks for coming in today.
Of course. Thanks for having me, George. This is amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's so fun when you can talk to somebody else who does a lot of the things that you do or shares things that you do. This collaboration of knowledge and experience, I think, is so valuable. And it's just also a lot of fun. So I'm glad that you ran into me at the event we were at, the casting event, and that you had time to do this today.
Of course.
Give me a little bit of background about yourself. Tell me about how that came into your life, and then what shunted from voiceover. Where did the podcast come from after that? So when did voiceover start for you?
Actually, voiceover started I don't like saying 8, but 7 or 8 years ago. To be technical, it probably started way before that, but I didn't really consider myself serious at that point because I didn't have a booth. So I felt more serious when I had a booth. I started, my very first class was an audiobook class, actually, and I was horrible. I read Harry Potter.
That's a heck of a book to start with. Yeah.
Yep, and the first paragraph, I was like, oh my goodness, what did I get myself into? Mm-hmm. But from that class, I just remember it was so exciting. It was exhilarating. I was shaking like a leaf. I didn't have any concept of what I was doing, but I knew this was something I wanted to keep doing. Mm-hmm. And so from there, I took class after class, and I immersed myself, and I took forever to do a commercial demo because I was like, I'm not ready. But I think it was part of imposter syndrome. Yeah. I think we all get like that.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where that stemmed from. And then I was like, you know what? I can do this. So then I finally did it.
You got over that hurdle.
Well, it took 2 years after I was studying to do that, because I'm a very critical person and perfectionist to the core. So I think that's where that comes from. Knowing that, hey, it's got to be done X, Y, and Z. Let's do it this way. But I already had that kind of mindset because I went to art school before I got into voice acting. So I had, how do I do things? How do I talk to clients? How do I send invoices? So I had a lot of that knowledge already. Right. But it was just a whole nother different creative outlet. So from there, I said, this is so much fun. And again, taking all these classes, then finally doing the demos. And then once I got the booth up, I was like, okay, this feels really cool and really exciting to be able to do something like this. Help others by bringing my voice to their projects. Yeah. And then at some point... You felt more
comfortable. It just sounds like you felt way more comfortable and professional when you had a dedicated booth space to record in.
Yeah, and my booth has gone through several iterations because you've helped me. I was like, what mic do I use? Here, use this Rode NTG5 mic, and then use the Steinberg UR12, and then... I remember contacting you for help on my neighbor's air conditioning. We could hear it. It was that low hum. Remember that? And then you helped me with a preset for that to get rid of that. And then all the other presets. But it's been exhilarating to just do what I love. And it's not really work.
So you got a stride going in voice acting itself. What are your key types of work that you not only book, but actually enjoy doing?
My favorite would have to be animation or character, video games, what else? Anime. I've booked a couple different things that I can talk about in the past. I've done video games for an indie project. I don't know when it's coming out, but this is before everything happened now. And I was on Big City Greens doing additional voices. That was pretty exciting.
Every time I see a movie or show, I sit and wait in the audience when most of the people are gone to eventually see additional voices. And I'm like, I know her. She's my client. I know that guy.
I think my name, it was either above or below Eric Bauza. And I was
cool.
like, oh, wow, okay, this is real. So I had to like,
Probably above alphabetical
pinch
order.
myself.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, whoa, okay,
Yeah.
this is definitely real. And there was a lot of other heavy hitters in that episode. And I was like, oh my gosh, just so blessed and fortunate to be able to do that. You know, I was a kid chomping on a hockey puck, making all the sounds. And I was doing some walla, and I was a corn dog vendor. So it was nice to be able to share those stories. And I think we did it in, I don't know, 30 minutes or something like that. But
No way.
it didn't feel like 30 minutes because I was going crazy because the animation is absolutely nuts.
It's frantic, right? Frantic?
You know, you got to go think bigger than you really think you are. So bigger,
It's
crazy.
theatrical, right? It's like theatrical plus.
Yeah, but your body is like moving and grooving and stuff like that. So you're like, this
You
is
work up a
different.
sweat.
Yeah, I was definitely sweating.
That's awesome. Obviously, to our listeners and our viewers, you have a unique voice. It is not the age normative, whatever you want to call that, voice. So I'm sure that has sculpted in some ways the kinds of work that you get cast for. Do you find that you're doing certain types of roles more often or characters as a result of that?
You know, it's funny. I've done some audio drama podcasts, and I remember I've done accents as well. And I've done Southern accents. They love my Southern accents. Apparently,
cool.
I've done it a couple of times for a video game. I can't remember the name of it right now, but
Is that
I've
something you
also done it for-
practiced? Or do you come from this?
I've always had a love for accents, even as a little small kid. I didn't know dialects and studying accents was a thing. I would literally sit in front of the TV, and before I knew it, I was like watching take after take and just rewinding. And when you had the VCR,
you were more than just mocking or mimicking. You were studying it.
I was, and I didn't think about it until recently, and I thought, oh yeah, I was doing that. But I didn't know that's what you were supposed to be doing. I loved it. I enjoyed it. In order to get, for example, the British dialect, I modeled my accent after Keira Knightley. And so I watched a lot of film. I watched a lot of movies she was in. I would rewind, oh, she said this. That's different. So then I'd look that up. We had minimal internet then.
Yeah. So you started to figure out your wheelhouse, your niche, your styles. You started learning your accents. You became way more versatile then because you could get cast on more stuff. All this stuff has worked out to continue your career. And then all along while that was happening, I'm assuming you were also listening to podcasts?
Yes, I was.
Podcast fan from way back?
Yes, I've been a fan of your podcast for a number of years.
From back in the EWABS days?
Yes.
That far back?
That far back.
The tongue.
Yeah. That's a really fun, because I remember I had you on, or I had...
There's VO Buzz Weekly.
VO Buzz Weekly.
Yeah.
And then that one I listened to a lot, and then yours, and then there was another one, VO Boss, but that was a bit more recent. Like a couple years ago. So that's, I don't know if that one considers it, but those two were, you got to listen to George. He always brings on like the amazing people. And I think what you called it at the time, you were like, it's Auto Body Shop. There was a podcast, they talked about sounds on their car, and you're like, oh, we're kind of like that, but for audio.
Yeah, it was a radio show. It was on NPR. It was called Car Talk.
Car Talk.
And these guys gave themselves the nickname, or somebody gave them the nickname, the Click and Clack.
Yep.
The Tappet Brothers. All of these things are plays on noises cars make. And so that was all when we started it out. You know, Dan and I both were fans of that. And so it was just a natural thing to use that. So we had that. But you heard that show, and it somehow, between that and the other shows that you were listening to or watching, somehow eventually inspired you to kick off and start doing your own, huh?
Yeah, the podcast is about 5 years old now.
Yeah.
I started in 2019 before COVID, so it was definitely way before COVID.
Yeah, good timing, actually.
Yeah, and I didn't know what I was doing. I did a lot of research. I don't just go in and jump in. I have to do tons of research. There was no like, hey, this is what you're supposed to do. And I just taught myself. All right, if they can do it, if VO Buzz Weekly and George, they can do it, then I can do it. And I've always was like, okay, I've always had this go-getter mentality.
You didn't look at what we're doing and going, oh, that looks too much work. Oh, that's like that. I'm not, no thanks. You just were like, no, I can do that.
Yeah, it's funny. Marilyn Wisner, I remember her saying that I'm a go-getter. And I thought, I don't know about that, but okay, I'll take it. It's a compliment.
Take it.
And I saw her at the pop-up event, which was amazing, by the way. And it was so fun because I just said, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, okay, this is editing. Oh, wow, this is a lot of work. And all right. And it was a bit sporadic when I would post. It was never every Wednesday.
And you didn't do what I know that the really hardcore podcast coaches are like, you got to get at least 6 episodes in the can before you, and that way you always have a few ready to go, and then you never miss a week. You weren't like that, right? No, you're just getting them done and posting them.
I had my small niche of people that I was comfortable with to talk to, because I think Tony was the first official person on my show, and then my circle of people got bigger and bigger, and I was like, oh, I guess I'm having some heavy hitters. I had Sarah Jane Sherman on, Eric Bauza. Like, don't ask me what number I'm at. I have no idea. I don't keep track.
5 years, an average of, have you been keeping up a once a week release schedule?
Trying to.
Yeah.
I think next week will be 230 episodes.
It's fantastic. I would call your podcast, for lack of a better way of describing it, a traditional podcast, meaning it's not live. You record an interview. It's audio only, because I've always considered a podcast an audio medium, even though there's even from the early days, there was a video podcast medium. It just never stuck. I think probably because YouTube came along, which took over video. But you started off and still to this day are doing audio only, right?
Yes. I've been told to do, YouTube, but that's a whole nother bag of beans that I don't really want to undertake. It's already enough work as it is to edit and post, and I schedule out all my social media for it. And what someone said is like I run like a well-oiled machine now.
Right.
So
because with EWABs and then VOBS, when Dan moved to LA, it felt, and it probably was a lot of it was my fault, but it felt like every year or two we were reinventing stuff. New computer, new software, a new way of doing the show, a new workflow, a new technical director. And it wasn't until honestly, it wasn't even until the pandemic, I think, where it just settled into a format, because we were forced to be working remotely. We had to find a platform and just use it. And then finally, we could just take it easy. We weren't troubleshooting and fixing and trying things new constantly. So yeah, and at the same time, I do another podcast called the Pro Audio Suite, which is and had been a traditional audio podcast. So the live stream was happening with Dan, and then the traditional podcast, audio only, was happening with my other crew. And it's been interesting having 2 different shows that work 2 different ways. But the audio show now, we're in the same place as you. We've been about 5-6 years doing audio, and now we are feeling the pressure to do video and integrate video into it. And it's a pain in the butt. It is a pain in the butt. It's a lot more work. It's harder for everybody to have because it's 4 of us, right? Plus a guest sometimes. And then to bring all that together seamlessly, is a pain. And because there's been so much effort and focus on the quality of the audio and not just the quality, like how good the mic sounds, but the quality of the production, how well it's edited, what's a tightly produced show. Now inject video into that? I honestly thought I could handle that. I thought that would be not that big a deal. No, it's not. You would think between the 4 of us, we'd figure this thing out. We'd have it nailed. Boy, was I wrong. I'm glad that you're sticking to your guns and sticking with an audio format. When you record your show, what's the main method you use to record and actually do the meeting itself for the interview?
So I've gone through, and I've had this show for 5 years, I've gone through so many different platforms to record because it's very frustrating when things aren't working or... Yeah, I've had the show for 5 years, but that doesn't mean it doesn't come with its own hiccups.
Yep.
And trying to figure out, okay, do I use Clean Feed? Do I use Zencaster? Do I use Riverside? Do I use, and I've used all of these very extensively, so I can tell you each and everything about
now
them.
You're using a new one today.
Yeah.
Because I forced
what
you
else
to.
did I use? A Zoom. I used Skype at one point. Don't ever do Skype. Don't use Skype. Zoom is way better, you know.
Yeah.
So I use Zoom. I use a hybrid of Clean Feed and Zoom. I had to just bite the bullet and pay for Zoom because I was like, oh, this is just a nightmare. I need it for my podcasting. And then I record a backup of my DAW of my voice,
Right.
and then I get them to record a backup of their voice and their DAW.
Is that ever a problem for them to do that?
I ask, and they are nice enough to do that for me.
Because they're all voice actors, right?
For the most part.
For the most
you
part.
know, casting directors typically don't have that,
Right.
so then I'm left with Zoom. So that's fine.
Right.
I'm okay with that. Zoom is still pretty good for what it is.
Absolutely. Like getting the interview at the end of the day is the key, is the most important thing. As I was saying before we signed on, I got that David Pogue interview and I was so excited. And when the technology of choice, which is what we're using right now, called Squadcast, failed us in the moment, Zoom was waiting. I got you, buddy. I got you. Zoom. And there's a saying we say in our circles that is, it's hard to out-Zoom Zoom. I've tried to find ways to use better, and there's new things that come along all the time. And at the end of the day, it's hard to out-Zoom Zoom. The only thing that Zoom doesn't do well is video, as I was saying. The quality of the video is fine, but it's low resolution. It's just not up to snuff for modern production. And that's where these tools like Squadcast, but Squadcast wasn't so great a year ago either, man. It was no great shakes. And it doesn't work perfectly with everybody, even if they are technical. And even if they have a good computer and good internet, it can still fail. So you always got to have a backup plan, right? So you're using Zoom, you're having the other folks record themselves. Sometimes we call it a double ender. And then they send you the files, and now you've got that to produce. What's your post-production flow like? So now you've got their audio. Oh, and also, when you're doing the Zoom interview, are you on camera with each other so you can see each other and react to each other?
So I'm not just like a spec. Yes. Sometimes I do. If I'm
Not
feeling
always.
like, not always.
Does it
I
depend
wasn't
on the
feeling good
guest?
the other day. Yeah, I wasn't feeling good the other day when I recorded one. And I don't want you to see my face. My eyes sunken in or something like that. So I was like, all right, I'm not doing it. Okay, it's great. I'm tired. It works out.
Well, in that case, what is the etiquette? Did the guest have their camera on?
I turn my camera off. You know, I have my little avatar there. So you can see it.
But what about
And
them? Since yours
They'll
off,
keep it. They'll turn it off too sometimes. Yeah.
Okay.
They
You
follow
really
suit.
leave it up to the situation, just how
Yeah.
you're feeling. The guest feels. Maybe we use the camera. Maybe we don't.
Yeah.
That's good.
So I try to do that, and then I edit in Adobe Audition. It's like my favorite. I don't know if I'll ever need to use another DAW, but I like it because of the multi-track. One track for my voice and one track for their voice, and then I have all in multi-track, then with the audio at the top, and then my end credits or whatever it is. I made a commercial to highlight other stuff that I do as well at the end, and then I call it a day. Sometimes I have bloopers. That's been a new feature because
Cool.
I thought, you know what, I want people to hear all the bugaboos that happen.
Do you put them at the tail or?
I put at the end
Yeah, the
after
tail, yeah.
it's done. So that's what I do. I don't
I've done that
always
with our
do
video cast too. I
Yeah,
couldn't
it's
resist because
fun.
I was editing the video cast version. So when there was a real good flub from our host Andrew, because I knew he could handle it. The dude's old. I would stick his flub at the tail at the very end after the end credits because sometimes you can't pass it
Yeah.
up.
Yeah. But if it's organic and it's natural, it's funny, then I don't always do it, but
Right.
I try to as much as I can. But if
It's
I'm
not
like, oh,
always appropriate based on the conversation and the guest and
Yeah.
stuff. But yeah, we did. I mean, doing the Pro Audio Suite, we did it remotely, of course, because the two of the hosts are in Australia, and audio only communication too, right? Because we did everything on Source Connect.
oh man.
So there was no video for numerous years of the show, none. We never looked at each other. We never looked at what we looked like. So it was weird. But then again, maybe it was more like traditional radio in a way. It's like calling into a radio show, we're all just on the phone, but high quality. So it was interesting when we added video in. And now that we've added video in, now we don't want to turn it off. So we don't necessarily do a video show every time. And we've been doing less lately because the video is such a pain. But we do leave the video on. We've been using Google Meet, actually, for whatever reason, for the video conversation. It's arbitrary what we'd use for that, right? It could be Zoom. It's not what we record with, right? And then the producer, because he's a producer, he wants to do it the producer power user way and uses Source Connect Pro, and we all connect on Source Connect.
Oh, I feel
you know the
pain.
feeling.
Do you know how many times I've had to re-record an interview?
Ugh.
That is painful.
Yeah.
In the earlier days, I had to re-record. Someone's audio was just out of whack, or they couldn't figure out what clean feed was, or the amount of times I did not hit record. That's why I have buffers. That way, in case something happens, the amount of times I've had to, it happens. I don't like re-recording interviews because it's all organic. It's all natural. I don't know what they're going to say.
I know.
And so I have all my questions typed up. That's great, but it's my little script that I go off of, but I don't know what they're going to say. And it might spur something else.
And I've noticed that I know that you like to have you're a voice actor, so you're accustomed to reading and having script, and you're comfortable having script. I am not. I'm not a voice actor. I am not at all comfortable reading off script. So I never do it. And so do you find yourself less and less leaning on the scripted stuff that you have written down?
I still lean on it, but I have it there as, I don't want to say binky, but I have it there just to keep on schedule.
Stay on
because
track,
sometimes
keep on
we'll
schedule.
veer off,
Yeah.
and I'm like, oh, I got to reel us back in. What's
I
the
know.
next question?
That is my biggest weakness by a long shot, is I will tangent and I will go and go. So I'm looking at the little record clock right now. We're already at almost 27 minutes. So it's telling me, okay, let's keep it moving. But it's fun to have a conversation, and you want to always respect your guest's time, of course, right?
Sure. No worries.
Sometimes you have to have a hard out. Sometimes you do. So what kind of things did you try over the last couple of years that were you mentioned a few things that were a fail. What are the things that you really were challenged with and that we worked together to smooth out for you? What was something that we were able to improve for you?
Oh my gosh, there's so many different things. I was thinking about them. The mic, that's been like game changer because it's half the price of a 416. It's still a shotgun mic because I think
the
that
Rode,
thing.
Right? The Rode NTG5,
Yeah.
Is that what you need?
Yep.
Yeah.
Rode NTG5, you suggested that. I don't know if you told me specifically, but you told it was a webinar or something. Oh, buy that. I trust George. So I got that, and that just has been game changer. I've got 5 agents with that mic.
Fantastic. But what we're looking at right now is not that mic, and it's not the booth. So we're in your podcast production room, right?
Yes, this is
Tell
the podcast.
Tell us about what you're using here.
So this is the Shure mic.
This is the MV7?
It was the cheapest one I could find on Sweetwater, and it was a demo one. I should know it.
It plugs in with an XLR cable, right?
Yes, it plugs in. It's just the XLR cable.
MV7.
And then I have a cloud lifter because unfortunately with the Shure mic, it's very quiet like this. And
yeah. The Steinberg's fine, but it doesn't have a ton of gain. So you needed that extra kick.
I needed that. Once I did that, I was like, oh, I sound punchy. This is great.
It sounds clean. I got to tell you, it sounds very clean. Like I've heard a lot of dynamic mics you're using with people's setups, and they're doing it for voiceover. Sometimes it's not very clean. There's a lot of hiss. This is clean. So
thank you.
Sounding
Thank
good.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And I used the Steinberg UR12, the one that you told me. I have 2, one in here and one in the booth.
They're so affordable. You're buying 2 is not a big deal, right?
I probably should have a third one just in case one breaks, because I feel like that's going to happen at some point.
Hardware like this doesn't work in a vacuum, right? It's plugged into a computer, right? And they're making this mind meld, right, between the hardware and the computer. And it's incredibly rare for the hardware itself to flip out. It happens, especially with the much more complicated ones like the Apollo interface. That thing is a very complicated computer, essentially. And once in a while, you just got to shut that sucker off. It's rare, but it happens. But with things like a Steinberg, rebooting it means unplugging the USB cable and then refreshing it. And that sometimes fixes things. And when that doesn't work, it might be because a new system update was installed without your ability to prevent it. Often on Tuesdays, it seems to happen. And then things get glitchy. And then last time that happened to you, you had a bugaboo. Did you find that just simply swapping interfaces just magically cleared it up, or did you find that you had to install a driver update or something like that?
Honestly, switching them, because I went back and forth with Steinberg and they were helping me troubleshoot because I got this like the blue screen of death on my computer. And I was like, wait a minute. And it was saying that it was the audio. And I was like,
wow.
If anyone knows, the blue screen of death is like terrifying.
We had that on the Mac too. I call it the gray curtain of death.
Gray curtain. Okay,
this
that's
gray
good
thing
to know.
would come down, and in like 17 languages, it would say, hold down your power button to reboot your computer.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that interesting? Switching it out, all of a sudden you were back to work?
Yep. And I was like, I'm not switching them back because I'm afraid what's going to happen. Backups, right? And again, in the height of the pandemic, I was like, okay, I need a booth that I can directly go into, and because my husband works from home, and so clickety clackety.
Yep.
Drawing on a computer, that type of thing. So I had to think, okay, what's the next best thing? Okay, use my closet. And I fit it out, and I remember having you help me out with a lot of different things. And trial and error. That's what I'll say about that.
Right.
That's how you get better. There's so much trial and error. The tech can be great, but if you're not proofing it, it's not going to make a difference.
Are you a baker or something? Isn't proofing a baking thing?
No, I don't bake.
Okay,
I wish I did. I am not very good at baking. I prefer cooking.
Baking is chemistry, right? Cooking, you just add a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Yeah.
And this is good. Baking doesn't work that way, right?
Baking bread, I tried that. Did you? And that is not easy. For people who excel in that, I can't do it. My loaves would...
Right.
They didn't rise or something. They did rise, but they were doughy still. And I was like, yeah, that's not right.
Now that you've been at this for a while, you've interviewed a lot of guests. Have you started repeating guests yet?
I have a little bit. I don't do a ton of it because I'm still at that point where, I need to get
There's still a lot of people you want to talk to.
There's still a lot of people in the industry that I have not talked to. So.
Who would you consider a get? Man. Where like it's not somebody already that you know personally, or someone that you've coached with, or somebody you're already like networked with, somebody outside of your network completely, and you're like, yes, like I was saying, David Pogue, he was a client, but still getting him as a client was a get, right? Yes. So who's somebody that to you is like a get?
Keith David.
Keith David? Awesome. You know, I spoke to him for 30 minutes at a party. Extemporaneously, it was like a manager's party, you know, and he and I chatted, and it was the greatest thing ever. I was like, damn it, I wish this was a recording, but it was just a conversation at a party. But he was so nice to talk to. Did you enjoy chatting with him?
I did. I met him at a party as well.
Yeah.
And I think his wife was there, and I think I took a swig of water and pretended it was, and I was like, all right, wash my hands. Hi. and he was so sweet, and we were talking about acting. And
he's definitely an actor's actor, huh?
Yeah.
He does a lot of on camera. If you don't know who he is, look him up. He does a lot on camera. He's a heck of an actor. He's awesome. And his voice, of course, is
oh my gosh.
Amazing.
Grew up with it. Gargoyles. That was the show.
Oh, cool. Okay. Getting him was a big deal because you're a fan.
Yes. Big fan. Haven't yet, but that would be an ideal conversation. But I got message his people and stuff like that. So.
Oh, I hear you. Our get that we never got on my other show, and maybe someday, Billy West. Another one of those amazing voices of my childhood from back even, believe it or not, in Howard Stern days. And another one of those, I got to talk to him at a party for 30 minutes, just the two of us, and had a great old time. And I haven't been able to catch him since. So that's my, Billy, you're my white whale. Get your people to talk to my people.
Yeah, there you go.
That's so cool. It's been a blast chatting with you about the biz and just the process of production. Do you have any tips for anybody that's either just getting started at the podcast or thinking about doing a podcast, or what do you have as a takeaway for folks listening and watching?
I would say that pick something that you love talking about, because if you don't enjoy it, you're not going to enjoy editing. You're not going to enjoy all the social media stuff. You're not going to enjoy promoting it. So if you enjoy talking about it, that's where it starts. And I think on my podcast, I try to have a nice blend of who is this person, and let's know your journey. What do you bring to the table? Let's talk AI. Let's talk, what do you want to plug? I try to have that blend of on my show, but everybody's different. Again, I think if you talk about what you love, then it's not really that hard.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think you can make it work.
Absolutely. I totally agree with that. I don't mean to prolong the conversation, but it just came to my mind. When you started your show talking about voiceover, were you in any way hesitant thinking, oh my gosh, nobody's going to listen to my podcast. There's already other podcasts about voiceover. Why would somebody listen to mine? That didn't stop you, obviously. You just went for it anyway because you loved it.
Yeah, I think the main reason I started the podcast is because I saw that VoBuzz Weekly did it, you did it, and I thought, well, if they can do it, I can do it. And that's what I kept telling myself. But I also wanted to do it because I wanted to give back to the voiceover community for everything that's given to me.
Yeah, and
I don't believe that back in the day, 15, 20 years ago, there weren't as many resources as there are now that are available for free.
That's right.
So,
and it's hurting my bottom line, everybody. So, so stop it, will you? Jeez.
There's a lot of resources.
There's way more resources and good ones. Way more good ones now than it was.
Yeah, there's some people that put out information that maybe isn't as good. I think the good news is we have this community of tight-knit people. I've known you for years, and you're highly sought after for what you do. Just so you guys know, he has helped me with my stuff, so go to George. George is awesome.
Thank you. And so it's time for the plugs. So tell everybody how they find your show, what's your preferred platform for them to listen on.
Sure. The name of my podcast is Voice Acting Stories. I renamed it because the other name was just too long, and I was like, I needed something short and sweet. Kiss, keep it simple. Yeah. And so then you can find me on Instagram, Voice Acting Stories. I'm easy to find. Just go to my website at vbarrera.libsyn.com, and there you can listen there. You can listen over on Apple Podcasts.
And this is self-supported, and it's not a sponsor-supported show. You support your show, right?
Yeah, I do. I'm looking at getting sponsors, but I don't want it to detract from what the show is. If I want to work with somebody, it's because of the values that they bring and stuff like that.
That's on my to-do list. One thing I would say, don't try to find 4 sponsors. Try to find a sponsor. Just a good person or service provider you trust. Let them underwrite the show like NPR does, and just go with it. That would be my recommendation. But you do what works for you, and hopefully you find somebody you like to work with.
Yeah. It's on the to-do list. I don't know if it'll happen this year, but maybe next year. We'll see.
Nice chatting and catching up, hearing your process. Hopefully this maybe inspires somebody to try podcasting themselves. And if you do, we got your back. In fact, you probably don't know that we have a lot of podcasting specific or podcast friendly resources. If you go to /podcasting on our George the Tech site, there is a page dedicated to that for getting processing templates, a workflow, just studio setup guidance, and all the things that we were able to help Veronica out with. You can find that over at /podcasting at georgethe.tech. But thanks again for your time. I'm glad you all hung out with us today, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Veronica.
Thank you, George, for having me. It's been a pleasure.